Harry's Wife, Part 75.8. Don't Touch Me. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, the David Attenborough of Narcissism. As Mr. Attenborough, an empath, in case you were wondering, scrutinises animals in the wild, providing his erudite observations and voiceover, I do the same with regard to narcissism. And here I have some more video footage for you, much to enjoy, where I provide you with the observations and analysis of what's going on involving Harry's wife. This will enable you to understand why she behaves in the way that she does, why she acts as she does, what's going through her mind, and to enable you to extend your own knowledge of these behaviours to narcissism as a whole. These are invaluable lessons that you're being provided with, and, as always, your comments evidence the usefulness of which you find this material. Continue to embrace it, like it, and share it. Thank you. Our first piece of video footage takes us back a few years to when Harry's wife arrived at St. George's Chapel for her wedding. The footage shows her arrival in a swanky-looking old car, and the camera is from an angle above as she emerges from the interior. You will see, as she emerges, there is a gentleman on hand who offers his hand to assist her as she exits the vehicle. Of course, exiting a vehicle when you're wearing a large a wedding dress with a particular train, it can be a difficult operation, and therefore the chivalrous individual, no doubt his particular role that's been assigned to him, was there to enable her to exit gracefully, without falling over, without treading on her dress, without making a tit of herself, although of course what he didn't know was she'd completely be able to do that in the years to come as a consequence of her recent behaviours. Nevertheless, we see her as she emerges from the interior, and he puts out his arm, and at first she places a hand upon him as she manoeuvres her way out. Then he continues to wait, looking to assist her, and he puts forward the hand again in order to help her. And at that juncture, she swats it away. And you're able to see that she swats it away as the man removes his hand, as if he's touched something hot, as if he's placed his hand in scalding hot water, or accidentally placed his hand on the hob when it was switched on, and therefore he recoils. Now, what's going on here? Well, of course, his gesture of help would be seen as a positive act, because it's positive fuel, because it's a kind gesture. So there isn't any issue with regard to the provision of fuel, but why does Harry's wife swat it away? Well, two reasons. The first is that it's seen as an interference with regard to her control. The suggestion is that she can't get out of the vehicle successfully on her own, and that she has to be helped by him. That offends her sense of control, and therefore her narcissism responds with the ill-mannered shoving away of his hand. It isn't about you're getting in the way of my camera shot, or that you're too lowly to be involved with me. It's quite simply, the offer of assistance suggests that she can't do something herself, and therefore threatens her sense of control. Of course, we have a brilliant example of the hypocrisy of the narcissist, because as she first emerges, she does use his arm, and therefore grey-haired fellow, quite understandably and chivalrously, continues to remain and would think, well, yes, I've helped her a little bit there, I'll continue to help her. But now, in the next moment, and remember, this demonstrates the compartmentalization of the narcissist also, she swats his hand away. A mere second beforehand, she took his hand, or rather placed her hand upon his to steady herself as she exited the vehicle. When he offers it again, it's swatted away. This is an excellent example of the compartmentalization of the narcissist and how we operate moment by moment. And you can be painted white in this moment, and the very next one become painted black. And that is what has happened with regard to this individual here. He's interfered with regard to her sense of control, and the instinctive, instantaneous response of her narcissism is to haughtily push his hand away. The second aspect of this, beyond the interference with her sense of control, is that it is part of the rejection with intimacy. Now, of course, Mr. Silver-haired gentleman isn't trying to cop a feel here, far from it. But of course, touching us in an uninvited way suggests intimacy, and we reject that. Intimacy is a threat to control also. So there are two threats to control working here. The first is the implicit suggestion, as interpreted by her through her lens of narcissism, is 1. You think I can't get out of the vehicle myself and think that I'm a doofus, thus threatening control. And the second one is, you are trying to touch me in an uninvited manner. That affects my control also, because it smacks of creating a link between you and I that you're not allowed to do without my permission. We reject intimacy, and I've explained elsewhere in videos why that is, that how attachment is the seat of misery for you, but we don't attach to you, we attach you to us, and that we reject intimacy because it smacks of an assertion of control over us, and therefore we must reject it. So this short clip encapsulates quite a significant amount of the narcissistic dynamic. It demonstrates a sense of entitlement to treat this gentleman both using his help and then rejecting it. It shows the compartmentalization. It demonstrates hypocrisy. It shows a response to the threat to control manifested by one action that threatens control in two ways, and is a superb little nugget of information for you to digest. Drink it in. Our second piece of footage shows some rather unusual manoeuvres by Harry's wife. Some of you may be familiar with the situation when you're on a night out and you're slamming back the tequila, downing a few pints, and one of your friends always vanishes without saying goodbye. That's known as the Backdoor Boogie. They vanish without a departure, without a goodbye, a farewell, an auf Wiedersehen, or an au revoir. Away they go. Here we see some rather strange kind of boogieing going on by Harry's wife. Not so much backdoor boogie, but more boot boogie, or for our transatlantic cousins, trunk boogie. So we find Harry's wife mooching around in the back of a vehicle. Not sure if it's hers or somebody else's, but one suspects that she's up to no good and she shouldn't actually be there, because along comes tall chap in pink polo shirt, and he turns and remarks, in essence, as to what's going on here then. Hello, hello, hello. Harry's wife responds, and then along comes, it's not the Ginger Prince. It might be his body double, although not a particularly good one. But along comes Ginger Mark II, and he makes a remark about something. And note Harry's wife's reaction. Zip, 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 zip. It looks like she's been placed on rewind. She just backs away from whatever she was doing in the back of that car. Caught. You've been up to no good, Harry's wife, clutching onto your hat as you slide away. And then, in the extended clip, we see her by the car again, and then off she goes, retreating once more. What's going on here? Well, we don't have any particular context in the clip that's provided here by Mail Online, and it would appear that when the two gentlemen appear, they speak to her about something, thus giving her fuel, but they evidently challenged her. And in the circumstances, once again, because there's a threat to control posed by this challenge, her narcissism has three options. The direct assertion of control. So she might decide that she's going to knee him in the balls and then crack him on the back of the head, and then when the ginger interloper arrives, she goes for him with a nipple tweak and yanking down his baseball cap. Of course, the facade won't let that happen. There's no opportunity for the indirect assertion of control here, and therefore her narcissism opts for active withdrawal. She basically slips away, disappears from the scene. You see, when it comes to withdrawal, which allows the assertion of control in our alternative world, what happens is it can be active withdrawal, where we basically walk off from you, storm out of a meeting, or slam the phone down on you. or don't reply to your text message that you've sent or your email. And then there's passive withdrawal, where they essentially stay in a position of not interacting. Here, this is active withdrawal. The two men, presumably she knows who they are, and therefore they'd be non-intimate secondary sources, or if she doesn't, they'd be non-intimate tertiary sources. They challenge her in some way, they issue challenge fuel, and her response to that challenge is simply to slide out of the picture, backwards. They probably caught her up to no good. Perhaps it's Catherine's vehicle, and she's there deciding that she's going to deposit the crown jewels that she stole earlier to try and incriminate Catherine. Who knows? Our third piece of footage relates to some signing of some book. And as the scene opens, in marches Harry's wife, leading the way. She has to be first. She's the pioneer. You follow behind me, lapdog. In she walks, eyes on the prize. Right, she sees the book. She turns to the intimate partner primary source. Out comes the guiding arm. Yes, Harry is so stupid he doesn't know where he should be walking. That's essentially what her narcissism is signalling. He's under control, but she's maintaining that control by steering him. And if you've seen in many videos, there's this repeated touching him on the arm, touching him on the small of the back, manoeuvring him into position. So, in essence, I'm your handler, Harry. Here you come. In you come. Yes. Let's move you along there. And then, all of a sudden, enters the frame Woman in Red. Not the Lady in Red, as sung by Krista Burr, but Woman in Red. She'll take it from here. Arms wide, pointing, here you are, stand here, that's it. And notice there's almost a moment of hesitation from Harry. Do I follow her, or what do I do here? Do I do what Woman in Red says, or do I follow what the handler in green says? He turns to her, almost looking for that approval. He then, okay, back to Woman in Red, so I need to do this? Yes. Notice that as Woman in Red takes over matters, directing Harry with the expertise of a traffic police woman, notice the look on Harry's wife's face. It's, as you pause at about 6 seconds in, you'll notice that there comes the beginning of the stare. Excuse me, who do you think you are? And of course, her control over Harry is being interfered with. Woman in Red is simply being helpful. She's simply steering Harry to where he needs to be. But she's not allowed to do that. Harry is the possession of Harry's wife. Everybody should know that. And therefore, her assistance at directing Harry to where he needs to go interferes with Harry's wife's control. She's wounded. And therefore, the ignition of cold fury starts. And we see the glimpse. The stare begins. Then, Harry moves towards the table. His handler continues to look on, clutching the bag. Another gentleman arrives. It looks like he's going to sign something too. And Harry starts to write his name. Yeah. He gets there in the end. Well done, young man. He didn't even have to turn to his handler for help in spelling. Possibly it's already been written above in large block letters and he just has to copy. We don't know for certain. That's just speculation on my part. Harry signs, and then having done so, stands up, and he looks at the book. He looks pretty pleased. Yeah, that's my writing. That's me, Prince Harry. Got my name right. Brilliant. Didn't write conker bollocks. Didn't write let's get naked. Didn't write tits and bum. Brilliant. Got my name down there. Absolutely brilliant at this kind of thing. Go me. And he holds the pen out. And he doesn't turn to his handler and proffer it to her. He just continues to stand holding the pen, causing her to take it from him. And you can see with the look on her face, she's not pleased about that. He should have been turning and saying, "Here you are, darling. Here's the pen. Your turn now." But no, he doesn't. She has to take it from him. The look on her face shows that she's less than impressed by that. Again, his failure to hand her the pen, but rather leave it dangling there in front, threatens her sense of control, and once again the fury ignites. She, of course, can assert control directly, and she does. She just simply takes the pen from him and gets on with it. But inside, there will be the first roar of the ignited fury as a consequence of his failure to submit to control. And again, you'll see how control is a near constant thing. We don't need it when we're unconscious, when we're asleep, but control happens moment by moment by moment. And therefore, at the beginning of the segment, she has control. Then it's threatened by Woman in Red, and then it's threatened again as a consequence of the failure to provide the pen. And just in that short clip again, we see 2 threats to control. There is no response to the Woman in Red. Again, she can't go over and assert control directly. There's no indirect assertion of control available to her, so she stays in a position of withdrawal with the start of the glare appearing. But matters move on immediately because Harry then starts to sign the buck. And then control is threatened once more as he fails to proffer the pen to her. This time she asserts control directly by looking nonplussed at his behaviour and taking the pen rather pointedly from him. So another excellent example demonstrating the threats to control and the responses thereto. And so to our 4th piece of footage. Here the royal family are leaving church, and the car pulls up with the chauffeur ready to drive them away, and our camera moves up to focus on the royals. I think we see Anne there in green, and Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, William, Harry's wife, Harry, Charles. And Charles is saying something, all back to mine for a game of Twister, I think. Words to that effect, undoubtedly. And eyes are on him from Harry, and Harry's wife is there with her usual stuck-on grin. And this is not so much about Harry as keep your eyes on Prince William. He's got one of those very difficult scarves that have a life of their own, as he immediately starts to faff about with it. And, of course, proximate to him is Harry's wife, and she turns. And in that instant, William notices that her gaze has been focused upon him. He doesn't want to have anything to do with her, and therefore does a very poor impression of man-adjusting scarf, and continues to faff around with it in order to deflect from having to deal with her. She turns away, and he continues to mess around with the scarf, patting it here, tucking it here, pressing it down here. Was that a stray breadcrumb? I think it was. I'd better try and remove it a little bit more. Yep. Just check around the throat. Not too tight, not too loose. Yes. All good there. Jolly good. Oh, thank God my wife has stepped closer to me so I don't have to be anywhere near that nutcase over there. And it demonstrates there that at this juncture, William's clearly got the measure of Harry's wife. He won't know that she's necessarily a narcissist, but he recognises that he wants to keep his distance in effect. Although he is physically proximate to her, he's avoiding engaging with her. He is avoiding eye contact. He studiously looks away from her, faffs with it, causing her to have to look away. In that juncture, when she tries to engage with him, he ignores her. That will have caused wounding. She immediately is forced by her narcissism to turn away. She doesn't try and continue the engagement with William. She's been wounded by that. The narcissism says, don't bother. And instead, she focuses on smiling still. The facade jumps in. What's she continuing to smile about? If you notice that as Charles walks away, and as she turns to William, nobody else is smiling, but she continues to do so. And that's because the facade is doing its level best to ensure that what's going on below doesn't manifest, that the ignited fury as a consequence of William's rejection of her doesn't come to the fore. William doing a great job of ignoring her and then causing that wounding in person, and her facade on this occasion actually remaining intact. So it's a useful opportunity to see instances where her facade does remain intact, because the smile remains plastered, but the smile lingers for far too long. There isn't anything more to continue to smile about. Prince Charles' observation about Twister at the very beginning elicits the smile. Turn to William, no, rejected. Turn back, smile again. What for? It's the facade that puts it in place. The response is unnatural. The individual wouldn't just continue to smile, but the facade, as part of her narcissism, has generated that as a response to the wounding inside. She feels that familiar sensation as the fury ignites, but her mid-range facade, on this occasion, remains intact. And she even locks eyes with Catherine, who provides a smile, which demonstrates that Catherine is under control, and she provides a little bit of fuel, so there's no issue with the threat to control there. And another excellent interaction that demonstrates the behaviours and responses of the narcissist in action. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.